Do you want to open this one or should I?
It's your episode. You gotta open it.
What do we say?
Unprofessional. How do I work with these people?
I just don't remember how we intro.
Hello and welcome to Cinema
It's
Crush.
been a while.
It's been exactly a week.
No, it hasn't.
It's been exactly 2 weeks.
2 weeks. That's too long. I have the memory of a very astute goldfish.
Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Cinema Crush.
Welcome.
I'm Emily, your wife host.
I'm Jacob, your husband host.
Yeah. Why not?
So weird energy for an intro.
Well, we could say co-hosts, but it's more than that, right?
I suppose.
It works. Why not? It is our anniversary after all.
Kind of.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, not our wife and husband anniversary.
No. That was a little while ago.
Yeah.
Because we've been married for 2 years, but today marks our together anniversary of being in a relationship.
Yeah. For 10 whole years.
10 years.
Which-
2012 to 2022.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a long time.
It is.
I don't think we've talked about like how long we've known each other on this podcast.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, we like basically grew up together. Like I think you did the math of like total time that we've known each other and it's like 14 years or something.
18.
18.
From-
Oh.
How long we've known each other? 18, because we
18.
knew each other in second grade.
Oh,
We-
yeah.
We knew of each
Well-
other's existence.
Yeah. I don't remember that. Because that's a long time ago.
But like we were friends from like what, 6th grade, 5th, 6th?
Probably like 6th,
Somewhere in there.
I think. Props to our parents for putting us in a K through 12 school.
Yeah. We grew up in the
Yeah.
like same environment,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm glad I'm still with you.
Yeah. I don't plan on that changing.
Well, good. That sounds stressful.
Yeah. I feel a little bit bad because I almost forgot that this date was coming up just because this week has been so like weirdly busy but not busy kind of a week.
Yeah. It's election season.
It's election season.
We got our ballots in.
I work in local government and this is the first time that I've really been like very aware of local politics. So, especially because I manage our city's social media. So I see a lot of people talking about who to vote for and campaigning and all that stuff. So,
And try to remain non-partial
yeah,
to all of it.
right. Yeah, because when you're talking as a city, people are looking at your social media pages and being like, okay, this is what the city thinks. When in reality, I am one person who is posting out to Facebook and Twitter and Nextdoor.
I mean, a lot of it is just like city updates and
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of
announcements.
all that I personally feel like a city should be posting about.
Yeah.
It's actually illegal for city staff to endorse politicians.
Yeah, as it should be.
Yeah, so
Makes sense.
there's a fine line to draw.
There's our government section of this podcast.
Yeah, so government update. NaNoWriMo season is here.
Yes, you've been blazing through your word
Yeah,
count for
so-
the days.
NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month. It is a nonprofit foundation, but I think it just kind of started as like a month of November tradition. But basically, it's this like challenge where writers of varying skill levels and professional levels all over the world sit down and write a 50,000 word first draft. I have been chipping away at a fantasy western because I kept reading fantasy westerns and none of them quite scratched the itch that I wanted them to. So I was like, I'm just going to write my own. So I've been working on it. I don't know if anything will come of it, but it's been a lot of fun to sit down and seriously write.
I haven't read any of your stuff yet, and I think I'm just gonna wait until you're done at the end of the month.
I don't know if that's a good idea because it's going to get long. I'm probably going to have more than 50,000 at the end.
Oh, I know. I'll put it through a text to speech and just listen to it.
Oh. I don't know how well that's. I wonder how it's going to read my main character's name.
I don't know. I am not a fast reader
No.
at all.
That's why you got to chip away at it as I write it. I honestly don't care if anyone reads it. I just want to put it down.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I've been working on my short film.
Yeah.
Trying to catch up, honestly, to where I should be in my production schedule.
I don't know. Have you explained fully, like, the fact that you have, like, a actual production schedule and everything for that?
I don't think I have. I haven't talked about it much on any of my social medias or anything, just because I don't have time.
Yeah.
Because the more I talk about the process of how I'm doing this thing, the less time I'll have to do it.
Right. That's true.
So, but yeah, I'm making a short film, and the first step I took in diving into this project was I wrote a manifesto for myself of like the rules that I would adhere to on the production, and like what to do if a deadline is missed, and how like mentally I'm going to approach this production. Because one of the things that I'm trying to do with this short is use as much free open source software as possible, because we are kind of in the midst of a VFX like revolution, in the fact that there's so much tools available to people now to do visual effects and animation. A lot of them free. There are some paid programs that I'm using, like Procreate, just because I'm used to that, like for my concept art. But that's a pretty low cost program overall. It's like what, $10-15?
Yeah.
One time purchase. So it's not like I'm spending thousands of dollars on animation software like most of those specialized softwares are. But I want to prove that you could do film quality animation with limited tools.
It'll be a good learning experience too, I think, for you to work with not rudimentary,
Honestly,
less flashy programs.
Honestly, can I rip on Autodesk for a minute?
I mean, unless they want to sponsor us.
They can Autodesk, you can sponsor me when you fix your software. I've had it with them.
Yeah.
They make Maya, which is like the animation standard.
Yeah. It's like what everyone uses.
And the reason it's standard is because it's very modular with coding, so a lot of companies don't use it how it is out of the box, so they'll mod their own software to work with it and make it good, which they shouldn't have to do.
Yeah.
Because out of the box, a lot of Maya stuff is very buggy and very broken.
Right.
The interface is clunky. It is an animation tool designed by engineers, and it feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's very powerful, but it's, like, for an artist, very hard to learn, like, very big learning curve. Blender, which I've been using for this film, is free and designed by artists, and in many ways is outperforming some of the tools. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, I will say.
Yeah.
But in terms of friendly, usable interface and, like, the ability for me to, like, pick up on things that I don't know about, very easy. They do not have to justify anything to me because it's free.
Yeah. They can sponsor us. Hey, Blender.
They don't have money. They're asking for money to support themselves.
Hey, Blender, can we ask people to give you money? You're great. This has been...
Go support your local Blender artist.
This has been Jacob's Film Corner.
Yep. My mini rant.
Filmmaking podcast within a film review podcast.
Is that a new section?
Jacob rants?
Jacob rants?
I mean, you've got plenty of things to rant about, so...
I'm sure it'll come up again.
Definitely. But now it's November, and, like, November is pretty much guaranteed cozy fall weather. Like, when I think of fall, I think of November. So
Or like late October.
yeah, like late, like Halloween. But now it's November. It's cozy season. And so I want to bring an equally cozy fall movie to the podcast. It's one that we've both seen. So this is not necessarily
Many times.
Many times. This is a definite favorite in our household. But I still wanted to talk about it because it's definitely a very influential movie for me. And it's Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox. So I'm excited to bring this one because have we brought a stop motion film?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
We've brought
Nor have we brought a Wes Anderson film.
Right, which we love him as a director. So yeah, I'm excited to. I can't believe I'm the one that's bringing a stop mo film.
I know. I'm
to
so
the
proud.
podcast. Well, yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. Did you know that this is Wes Anderson's first full animated film?
I did. I wish he would do more.
Yeah, honestly. Well, and also it's interesting because Wes Anderson is this director who's kind of the definition of a hipster.
He's very
dusting off. I'm picking up the tome of terms from the late 2010s. I'm blowing the dust off of it. I'm cracking it open. There are moths that fly out of it. A hipster is somebody who does something and they think that they're the first one to do it. There's somebody who is trying to break the norm of the mainstream. That's the main thing, is they're trying to jump out of the mainstream and do their own thing. Wes Anderson is very much, he fits that genre of person. I was reading an interview with one of the producers, Andrew Weisblum, was talking about working with Wes. And he was like, yeah, basically, if you're talking to Wes about how things are done in the industry and telling him, well, usually it's done like this, then he'll be like, okay, we're going to find a new way to do it then. We're not going to do it like that. He's very, like, anti-shortcuts, which, you know,
I kind of admire about him.
I respect. I don't think that's going to work on every production, but if you are setting out to make films like the ones that he makes, that is a very interesting way to go about it.
Do you want to talk about his style a little bit and just how it stands out in general?
Yeah.
With his filmmaking?
It's always, every movie has a vibe to it. I think Wes Anderson's creme de la creme of his film style is the way that he shoots, like, any scene is always very meticulously crafted. He's very big on color. He's very big on layout of a scene and how, like, all of the angles in a scene fit together. Everything almost feels like a 2D image because of the way that set pieces are set and how characters are framed. It's always just very, like, I don't know how I'd describe it.
I think I know. I've used this term to describe his films to my students before, but it's a very much a dollhouse approach to filmmaking, where the characters are not written the way characters normally are. They are kind of caricatures of people.
Yeah.
More so than realistic people.
Right.
Because he's not going for that.
No.
He never is. He's going for, like, this idealized version of this character.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I've read about his filmmaking is, like, he's always designing characters that don't quite fit in.
Yeah.
Like, you have your little puzzle with your square hole and your triangle hole and your star hole and your circle, and the characters never quite fit into a hole. Like, you can sort of jimmy them in there.
They all go like, in the square hole.
Like, this is sort of this character archetype, so I guess you can kind of wiggle it in there, but they never quite match up to anything.
Yeah.
Which is just how people are. But he's still really good at having characters that are written as archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't feel like real people. They don't feel like typical character archetypes.
No, but they all fulfill a role.
Yeah. And I think this movie in particular is an adaptation of Roald Dahl's Fantastic Mr. Fox. And I think that lends a lot to, like, this of all Wes Anderson movies that I've seen feels a little bit different. And I think it's because
He's got source material
he's
to come
got
from.
yeah, and like Roald Dahl is already like a good like cozy like slightly magical storyteller.
Yeah, we were talking about it today. I described Roald Dahl's writings as whimsical.
Yeah, whimsical is a good word. So you get like Wes Anderson's well-crafted, unique, out-of-the-box storytelling with this like whimsical vibe that you get from Roald Dahl, and it just makes this like absolutely wonderful.
It's the best sandwich, really.
Such a wonderful little movie to watch. Yeah.
Honestly, like probably the best directing choice for this story.
Yeah.
Just in the way it's turned out.
Something that I found out while I was researching this movie a little bit, Henry Selick was originally brought on with Wes to direct this.
So was Tim Burton. At one point, Tim Burton was attached to this, which I'm kind of glad that he didn't stay attached to it, because I don't think a Tim Burton funk would have done this story justice.
No. Well, and so Henry Selick ended up drifting away from this project to work on Coraline. Did Tim also work on that movie? I don't remember if he was
think
involved.
he did. I think it was just Henry.
And Neil Gaiman.
Yeah. We've talked about Tim Burton a lot lately on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of what happens with stop motion. And also a lot of the crew that animated this movie worked on like Tim Burton's Corpse Bride.
Yeah. I mean, the thing
He's just kind of everywhere.
The thing is, there's a lot of animators out there in the world, and like, it's already a pretty niche profession.
Yeah.
Stop motion is even more niche than that.
Yeah.
So like, a lot of the stop motion animators out there worked on a lot of these films.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah. So 3 Mills Studio did the animation for this film in London. And then McKinnon and Saunders did the puppets. And that's the company that worked a lot on Corpse Bride. So yeah, that's kind of what every time I read about stop motion animation that isn't Leica, it's usually like, oh yeah, there's this like group of stop-mo animators that sort of floats around and works on projects.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that they've touched like every stop-mo film. Curious where they base themselves out of. That would be interesting to know.
Mean, Portland's the stop motion capital of the world, so
yeah,
there's a lot of stop motion that happens here that under people's radars.
Yeah.
But also in because you said where's it shot? England,
London.
Because I think Aardman's also in Britain, so that's another big stop motion studio up there.
One of the things that I really love about this movie, everything I love about this movie, but one major thing that I come back to more than the film itself is the music. And attached to that, the sound design of the movie. I don't know much about how they crafted the soundtrack for this movie, but it is just this like perfect mix of like pop music and beautiful little plucky, whimsical instrumental motifs and like children's rhymes, and like it just perfectly encapsulates like what I would want the soundtrack for a Roald Dahl adaptation to be. It's just really good. To the point of Roald Dahl too, just a personal anecdote, because I was reading it in the little informational booklet that came with our copy of the movie. They remark on the fact that Roald Dahl, especially in Fantastic Mr. Fox, it feels kind of like an updated version of like a Beatrix Potter children's story. And I was like, oh, that's why I like it so much. Because I love Beatrix Potter. I just wanted to mention that because I think it's a very good point. Because she kind of pioneered telling stories with animal characters in little outfits.
Anthropomorphized.
Yeah. But specifically like quaint little British countryside farmers and things like that. And this is kind of like the grown-up version of that, because it's just about this guy who is like not content with his place in life and he wants to like climb the corporate ladder and get like a nicer house for him and his family. So it's a little bit more like modern of a take on that kind of storytelling. But with the audio, I don't know if you knew this. I feel like it felt like a familiar fact to me, so I don't know if we've talked about it. all of the audio that they recorded for the voice acting was not recorded in a studio.
Yeah, it's outside.
They just went outside and recorded it.
Because it has background noise throughout the whole thing. And,
Yeah.
But it fits because that's where they are anyways, outdoors.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think it's really great. The same interview that I read with one of the folks that worked on the film, he was saying like Wes didn't like how like antiseptic it felt to record in a studio and have like voice actors record alone and then try to stitch the audio together, so he'd have them all like come together.
I always like when shows and films with voice actors do it in groups.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna talk about Clone Wars on this podcast again.
You know, it's good.
It's a good show.
Watch
And
Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
I remember watching it as like when it was coming out as a kid, like a lot of the behind the scenes with Dave Filoni, because he would just put out these videos on like, hey, here's what we're doing. But they have groups of like the groups of voice actors, like as many as they can. Obviously, schedule conflicts happen.
Right, yeah.
But whenever they could, they would have them together.
Yeah.
And do the script reads.
Right. Well, because like on top of all that, like Wes Anderson coming into directing his first like full animated feature,
I think he's just used to doing it live action.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a nice blend between a live action production and an animation production.
Yeah. Well, because I think he didn't realize how beneficial it would be to have the reference footage from the voice actors interacting with each other. Because he also recorded a lot of reference footage of himself for the acting for the film.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so did a few other people that were animating on it, obviously, because that's what animators do.
I've just got this image in my head of George Clooney and Meryl Streep just out in the field with a microphone between them.
Yeah. It's a very Wes Anderson image.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Wes Anderson didn't use animatics for any of his films before this movie. Like, he didn't do animatics.
He's done storyboards for some of his other stuff, but
after this movie. This movie changed how he did movies.
Well, good. I'm glad he picked something up from it, because he does use like model making in his films.
Yeah.
And his other live action stuff, like even before Fantastic Mr. Fox. So he's always had a hand in like the craft.
Yeah.
Even though he's not the one making it per se, but like he knows the value of like a real object.
Pre-planning.
And I think like stop motion, I think, is the perfect medium for him.
Yeah.
To go into that world of animation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love when live action directors understand my process as an animator more, because what happens when this happens in Marvel a lot is they'll hire a big time live action director to direct this film, this action adventure movie or whatever, that is heavily reliant on the VFX and the animation without any knowledge of how that process works.
Right.
And oftentimes it leads to a lot of crunch on the animators. It's kind of a big issue in our industry right now, is trying to get better working rights for visual artists and artists in general.
Yeah.
Because I think people just don't understand that it's not just I push a button and it does a thing. Like, I have to program the computer to do what you want in your vision.
And make it look good.
And that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And computing power.
And I think a stop motion film is perfect for bringing somebody down to earth.
Yeah.
I think Wes Anderson is always for practical over visual effects.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Which is why I appreciate him a lot. Because I like that.
Yeah. And also, like, stop motion is as close to live action as you can get, really, with animation.
Yeah, I mean, you're just...
Because you're using cameras, you're using real lighting, you're using sets, you're using actors. They're very small.
Right. Yeah.
But they're actors.
Right.
It takes a lot more time to shoot a scene.
Yeah.
But they're actors.
But, yeah. I think that's all I wanted to talk about before we go and watch this movie. So, I don't know if you have anything else about the film that you know.
I have some other stuff, but I think I'll save it for afterward, just so that we have more to talk about, because I don't think we're going to talk about the plot of the whole movie.
Yeah.
Really. Because you should just go watch it.
Yeah, go watch it.
I don't want to spoil it for you on this one. I think we should just avoid talking about the plot synopsis.
Yeah. It's just a wonderful movie.
It's wonderful. It's one of the best stop motion movies ever made.
Yeah.
I say that with confidence.
Some might say it's fantastic.
Wow.
Let's go watch this movie.
Okay. And we'll see you after the break.
See you soon.
It's intermission time.
Hello, welcome to the intermission. It's just me this time, since this is my pick this week. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast so far. If you haven't watched this movie yet, I'm serious. Go grab a cozy cup of tea or hot cocoa and find it. It's on Disney Plus. And go watch it right now because this is the perfect season for it. I bet it's raining outside where you are. Go watch it. And then you can come back here and listen to the other half of this podcast. But if you like what you hear and you want to support our podcast, you can email us at cinemacrushpod@gmail.com. You can also follow us. We're over on Twitter and Instagram at cinemacrushpod. That's at cinemacrushpod. We'll be posting updates there and sharing things we love. If you have questions or feedback, you can tweet at us, you can DM us, comment on posts, or respond to stories that we put out. We'd love to hear from you. We plan on publishing episodes bi-weekly, so look for us again in 2 weeks with a new episode. We really appreciate you for listening to us and giving this podcast a chance. Please share us with people that you like. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you don't like them, but you think they'd like this podcast. I can't tell you what to do. I'm not your dad. But, go share it with some people. And I think that's all the announcements I have for this episode. So I will let you go and get back to the podcast for our review and reflection on Fantastic Mr. Fox. See ya.
And now, on with the show.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
We just finished watching our movie. Our cat is destroying our home. Let's talk about this.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about the fact that every time I need a blanket on the couch, somehow all of the blankets are underneath your butt.
Yeah, I think I just...
You have a talent for hogging all of the soft, squishy things on the bed the couch.
I'm like a dragon. I have a horde of blankets.
Yeah.
And I'm not using any of them.
No, you're not. You don't even know that they're there, but they all get crinkled and disappear underneath you.
I like to sit on it. Okay, it keeps me warm.
Our couch is warm enough.
I'm always cold.
Yeah.
All the time.
No, I know.
I'm cold right now.
I am not always cold. I'm usually quite warm. I am cold right now, though, because we had to turn off our heater so that it doesn't corrupt our audio.
Man, it's going to be interesting doing this podcast in the winter.
Yeah, we have to remember to turn off
I guess that'll give us a time limit, huh?
Yeah.
On recording.
Yeah, I suppose.
Before we freeze to death.
Yeah. We'll have some good winter movies coming down the line, but let's talk about Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Gosh, I don't know how many times I've watched this movie, but I feel like every time I have a movie that I've watched multiple times, I try to pay attention to something different each time. And with movies like this, where it's so handcrafted and detailed, like I expect Wes Anderson to be detailed, and I expect him to think a lot about background and framing and just small details. So in this movie, I was paying a lot of attention to like set design and like props, especially because for a stop motion movie, it's really fun to pay attention to props and think about how the team was accomplishing certain effects. Like, how did they do text of a certain size? How did they make clothing look proportional to characters? Did they make a concerted effort to do that, or did they choose to make materials look larger as a stylistic choice? I was paying attention to a lot of that and noticing a lot of like background text and things like that. That was just fun flavor just so good. Like every time you watch a Wes Anderson movie, there's kind of this fun, like, trying to spot one of the patterns of framing that he does, because he really likes symmetrical shots.
Oh, he's in love with symmetry.
He loves it.
Every film, every single shot has symmetry in it.
Oh yeah.
Which makes him stand out a lot. I usually, whenever I teach my storyboarding class, I'll pull up some Wes Anderson stuff, because he kind of breaks the rules a bit in that. Usually you want to save symmetrical shots for, like, highlights in your story.
Yeah.
Of, like, staging you want people to stick in their mind and remember.
Yeah.
Which is still true for a lot of Wes Anderson's films, I feel, because he's taken what is usually a specified tool and just used it throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
So by making everything centered, everything stands out.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't think would be the case, but I remember so many shots from so many of his films because of his framing.
Yeah, this is one of those, like, every frame is
A painting.
A painting. Not in a literal sense, but, like, every frame is composed so thoughtfully, which I feel like can be a little bit more intentionally done in a stop motion film, because you have to set up sets and you have to place characters in a very specific way. It's not like in a live action movie. Like, you don't have a giant director who's going around and, like, meticulously setting how each character is gesturing and walking around and standing in the scene. This is kind of a special case where you have a lot of control of every single shot. But it still feels like there's still an element of, like, chaos to it almost. And we can talk about it a little bit. I'm sure you have a little bit more information about it, but in both of the stop motion films that Wes Anderson has worked on, Mr.Fox and Isle of Dogs, he, like I was talking about before, he tends to, if it's an industry standard to do something a certain way because it makes it easier or look better, he tends to say, no, we're not going to do that. And in the case of his stop motion films where he has characters that are covered in fur, when animators are moving their heads around and changing expressions, it disrupts the fur on the character. So it creates this, like, wind tunnel effect almost on them. Like, it's like a static almost. Like, there's a white noise of movement from the fur because you see, like, their hands are moving it around. And it just adds this extra, like, element of, like, everything else is so meticulously placed, but that isn't. And some of the expressions, too, are, like, not quite perfect. But that, like, I'm okay with that because it fits.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, kind of coming back to Wes Anderson's mentality going into that, I think you hit the nail on the head of what I was going to talk about in these puppets is normally, unless you have to, you generally want to avoid fur on stop motion puppets for that reason. And he just said, nah, we're going to do fur.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, we can't have the fur move. We have to, like, groom it in place. No. You don't.
Don't worry
And
about it.
the technique that I've seen him use, and the animators use in this and in Isle of Dogs, is every frame they will blow on the characters so that you're not just getting specific displacement in the fur on
From,
one
like, where
area.
the fingers were touching or something like
Right,
that.
because you're not going to touch the whole puppet every single frame.
Yeah.
But there's enough disruption that, like you said, it creates this kind of static, this sort of wavy wind texture just kind of blowing through the scene constantly. Yeah. There's a lot of puppets on this production.
Yeah.
For every character, they had multiple puppets.
Yeah.
Not just as, like, backups, but as different costumes and different sizes. Because you were saying you were paying attention to the environment. I was also paying attention to the environment, and this film does a lot different. I guess not different. Intentional, forced perspective.
Yeah.
On things. Rather than making a bigger set to match your puppets to give grand scale, in order to save time on the set building, they did the opposite. They just made smaller puppets instead of bigger sets.
Yeah.
Which is super clever. And it's really fun to see the different sizes of like puppets, especially when someone's coming from way far in the background to the foreground, because they'll like kind of disappear over the hill, and then you'll see the next size of puppet come over the next layer, and then you'll see the next size of puppet come over the next layer.
Not only different sizes, but also different materials, just purely because the smaller you get, the harder it is to, use fur and cloth.
Yeah,
so a lot of them are like...
The smallest puppets are just cast rubber, basically.
Yeah, just like little figurines, almost. I just think that's really cool.
It is fun. One thing I also noticed, just another thing where it's kind of breaking the industry standard, is like stop motion, like modern stop motion needs to be smooth and like readable and like at 24 FPS. And this movie is just like, no, it doesn't always need to be good.
No.
Like, there's a lot of points where the characters are really rushing around and the timing is right.
Yeah.
But the frame rate sometimes will dip, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
I think this movie does something really interesting in terms of comparing a seasoned filmmaker and artist to somebody who would be newer to the industry, in that if somebody who is newer and didn't understand how these techniques are done and why you can break the rules, why that works, they would potentially try to cut corners like that, and it wouldn't be as successful because they don't understand why it still works. So I think watching movies like this and understanding the process behind them and where they were doing things differently and the reason why is a really good sort of like lesson for a creative to be like, okay, Wes Anderson is touted as like a master filmmaker, basically. I don't know if he's actually been called that before, but
I would call him a master filmmaker.
Yeah, this movie was nominated for at least 2 Oscars. So, animated film and soundtrack.
Nice.
So, they didn't win. Up won, by the way. But which is warranted because Up is a great movie as well. He knows what he's doing. I think this is also interesting because we like to watch A24 movies as well, that company, which is more of a company than an individual person kind of putting their name on films.
But they have a style.
They have a style too. They're very artsy, but I feel like I hear less people talking about A24 as opposed to Wes Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder why, like, I don't know if you have any thoughts as to why that might be. I don't know if it's purely like the subject matter that they choose, but I'm like curious if like
A24 is different than Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson is his own category. I don't think he's ever worked with them in any capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well they would mesh together. They're both artsy.
Yeah.
But they're both artsy in very different ways.
Yes.
Could you not watch TikTok while we're recording a podcast, please?
I'm not trying to. I'm trying to look something up.
Unprofessional.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, A24 and Wes Anderson are both artsy, but they're artsy in different ways.
And I don't know how you would compare them. I feel like it's like, the minimalist craze of interior decoration, where it's like you have to have the least amount of stuff possible and like everything's clean and manicured. I feel like that, and not necessarily that they make films like that, but I feel like A24 is like the minimalist, like artsy, like we want to make highbrow films kind of a thing. And Wes Anderson is over there like, okay, I'll sit here in my cottage full of random knickknacks that I found at various vintage shops with my 12 cats and my extensive tea collection. You have fun. You're doing great, guys. He's just like the maximalist, but it's curated,
Yeah.
Like, I think that's kind of how I compare the two in my mind. And there's a time and a place for either of those, because if I want to go to a fine art museum, I'm going to go to a fine art museum. But if I want to go to like some chock full curated antique store, that's where I'm going to go. I think that's a good example. Like, I know what I'm getting into with an A24 movie, which is like, I'm going to watch something cultured and like, like fancy
And bougie.
and high budget. And Wes Anderson is equally, I'm sure he works with pretty decent budgets. Wes Anderson is just like, yeah, you can come in here and poke around and like I'll like point out a few things, but like I want you to find some stuff for yourself too. It feels like a less guided experience because there's just so much to find in each of his movies. Like every single Wes Anderson movie that I've seen, I would absolutely rewatch because every time I watch his movies, there's something new that I notice. Like I think if nothing else, the rewatchability of his movies is incomparable.
And just the charm of the dialogue delivery.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it for me, because it's characters kind of talk over one another, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
It's very intentional. Every line is very intentional in how it's delivered, and he gives a lot of visual direction on his live action films, to the point where like if characters need to blink on cue, because like sometimes that is a thing in his movies where like characters will need to blink at a certain time.
Yeah.
Like that's how meticulous he is in crafting these things. A lot of his transitionary shots between scenes involve having the camera pan along to the side. He does this in stop motion as well, so that's just set up on a small rig. But on his live action projects, I've seen some of the behind the scenes, and they just have like this really big platform that they put the camera on and just like drag it around.
Yeah.
Between, because they'll build like 3 or 4 rooms in a row, and that's the set.
Yeah.
And then they just drag the big like camera rig across on the rails at a very specific interval on a very specific type of lens.
Yeah.
And that's his aesthetic, and he's carried that through in this as well.
I feel like a lot of his scenes in movies, like I'm thinking back to one of the more recent ones, French Dispatch, which has a scene exactly like that where they're panning through different rooms. Like it's like choreography. Wes Anderson is a choreographer.
Yeah.
Like it's like a dance almost. Like the way that everything is specifically timed to happen with musical cues or verbal cues. I'm sure also a lot of the like you were talking about like characters talking over each other and some of the dialogue and how it feels. And like I'm sure a lot of that comes from the fact that he has people record in the same space together and all of that. He's involving the actors a lot too in his process. That's one thing that I've seen a few different directors do is they have sort of the same pool of actors that they pull from. This movie is interesting because Wes likes to use Cate Blanchett in his movies, but this time he used Meryl Streep. Has she been in any of his other movies though?
Isn't she in French Dispatch?
I'm trying to remember if it's her or Tilda Swinton.
Oh, that's Tilda Swinton.
Because that's what I was thinking of. There's kind of like Meryl Streep, Tilda Swinton, and Cate Blanchett, and I kind of mush them all together in my mind as this like poised European lady. But yeah, he's got like a specific roster of actors that he returns to.
Bill Murray, Owen Wilson,
Does he usually...
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe.
He uses Willem Dafoe a lot.
George Clooney? Is he more regular?
No, George Clooney is a pretty unique one for this.
Okay. Yeah.
I wish he used George Clooney more. I feel like George Clooney fits this type of dialogue
definitely
well, because a similar delivery is with the Coen brothers in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because George Clooney's in that as well.
Yeah.
That's a similar vibe of kind of banter.
Yeah, another set of directors who like to use the same actors.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Them, and also I don't know how many people have been watching like The Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass.
Oh yeah.
Those TV shows have a lot of the same actors as well.
I feel like that one's a bit of a different situation for me because I view it more as a play than a movie.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's just like, oh, these actors are playing these roles now.
You know who pioneered that? Jim Henson.
Nice.
I don't know if that's actually true, but you were just, because you were talking about it like it's a play, I was like, oh, like the Muppets.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Muppets are actors. The Muppets are real people.
Of course.
I want a Wes Anderson Muppets collab.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine?
I don't know what it would be, but it'd be amazing.
You'd have to like you'd either have to like color sets to match the Muppets. Oh my gosh. I need this to happen now. Or you'd have to recolor the Muppets to fit the sets. Like have a slightly off color Kermit the Frog that's a little bit more mustardy.
A little more muted.
To fit a more muted set. Oh my gosh, I want this.
I just want more Muppets.
Yeah. Have we brought a Muppets
Oh, we will.
masterpiece?
I will bring Muppets at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love this movie.
Yeah.
Do you want to know some weird things about it that I learned today?
Yeah,
while
absolutely.
doing some research. I haven't read the book, but I read a summary of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I need to read the book. I need to read all of Roald Dahl's books. But Christopherson is not a character in the book.
Oh.
Which is weird because he's so central in this movie.
Yeah.
Similarly, with Coraline, which was beginning filming at this time, or at least in the process at this time, Wybie's not a character in Coraline.
Yeah. I knew that. I didn't know that about Christopherson.
Yeah, but I think both characters were added to their respective films for the reason of the other child character needed someone to play off of.
Yeah, they need like a foil.
Because you can't just be in the character's head all the time in the film.
Yeah.
You know, like the original Dune, where you're just narrating every single thought that the character has.
Yeah.
Go watch our original Dune review.
Yeah, that one's interesting.
It's weird.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I love Christopherson. He's such a good character, and I feel like he fits really well into this story. Like, it's just another Wes Anderson character, but I feel like Wes Anderson and Roald Dahl just mesh so well that I barely even notice.
There is something I'm curious. So I kind of mentioned that this story of Roald Dahl's is sort of fresh take on like a Beatrix Potter type story. I am curious how much modern flavor Wes Anderson brought to this movie, because I noticed a few different places where like he generally kind of either sets a movie in a very specific time or is kind of ambiguous about it. And like this film had like desktop computers in it because there's a scene.
But also Walkmans.
So I was like, what time period are we taking place in?
It's Wes Anderson fall vibe period.
Yeah, truly. But there's a scene where we're in the Badger, Beaver, and Beaver office.
Yeah.
And Badger is talking to him, and behind him on his desk, I was like, that's a desktop Mac. Like, that's just a computer screen behind him. It was really interesting. Did you have any other facts?
I got a couple. Coming back to the puppets, there are 535 puppets on this production.
Oh my gosh.
It's a lot of puppets.
There is, we were discussing before we started recording, but there is just a puppet of Fox, like, shaped like an apple cider bottle.
Yeah, if I was going to take home any part of this production, it would be that.
You would steal it.
It would be that pose of Fox just, like, frozen, trying to hide.
Yeah, in this absolutely wild, contorted position. Very good.
So good. Another thing I really like about these puppets, what always impresses me every time I watch this movie is the masterful construction of the human puppets, the farmers.
Yeah.
Because they're silicone faces.
Mm-hmm.
So they're hand shaping every syllable.
Yeah.
It's not replacement animation.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're used to in a Leica movie with the 3D printed faces. It's not how it's done here.
Yeah.
It's not how it's done on Isle of Dogs either.
Mm-hmm.
Every single face is posed by an artist, an animator, for every single frame sequentially.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize that. I guess that makes sense, because I was kind of noticing the way that their faces moved.
It's very natural. It looks like skin.
Yeah. But I didn't know that. That's a lot of work.
Uh-huh. And people wonder why it takes 4+ years to make stop motion movie.
Yeah. I don't think I said this, but this movie started production in 2004 and I believe ended in 2009, I want to say.
No, you're right, because we talked about it in 9, because 2009 was just a banger year for animated films.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, literally so many good films came out that year.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
I don't know why we can't go back to how that was now.
This golden age. So 2009.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
because I think it came out in London first for a film festival, and then they released it in the States.
Another fun thing I found out was, so the MPAA, which is the Motion Picture Association of America, they're the ones that give the rating
Yeah.
system for movies, so they have to screen them first, and like so that theater goers can know whether it's good for kids or not. The Death of the Rat was almost reshot because whoever previewed the film didn't get it. What they thought was happening is that the rat died, and then they fed the rat his own blood,
Oh.
which is absolutely not what happens in that scene.
No.
It's just like a complete misunderstanding of that whole scene, because it's like a kind of an oddly touching scene.
Yeah.
Of like giving this rat his last wish.
Yeah.
Like, it's not cider, but it's just like dirty water from over to the side.
Yeah.
And like, I have never interpreted that scene in that way anytime I've watched it. So I don't know what.
Well, because they would have had to have seen it with all the audio and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
So
know.
they almost had to reshoot it because I guess they just didn't understand the context of the scene.
Yeah. That, or maybe they were like, well, maybe maybe they thought that, and then they were like, oh, no, it's this. They were like, well, somebody might still think that, though. But I don't think anyone that's watched this movie has thought that.
No, I've never thought that. No.
That's one random person that,
Yeah.
that was like, but I thought this. And everyone was like, you were the only one. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
A little foretelling, but Miss Fantastic Mr. Fox was Wes Anderson's first book as a child.
Oh, nice.
Like the first book he ever owned.
Nice. I knew that he was a big fan of Roald Dahl, but I didn't realize that this was like the first one.
It's like his intro to reading.
Wow.
It's like, ah, nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
So he's got a deep personal connection to it.
Yeah. Well, he did a great job telling it.
That's the point. So there's a point in the movie where I paused it and went back and rewatched a scene.
Oh, yeah.
Is because there is one CGI scene
Oh.
in this film, or at least a scene where CGI was used.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it's the scene where the tunnel like floods, like one of those shots is not stop motion. Couldn't tell.
What scene is it supposed? Like, just a shot?
I think it's just a shot in
Like
one
a
of
frame?
in one of the scene. Not even like a frame, just like I think when the water first starts to come in, it's not actually stop motion because it's like they needed it to be more liquidy.
Yeah.
To start out.
Huh. I was wondering. I was thinking that before because I was like, I don't think Wes Anderson uses CGI in his films really, but I guess he got one shot.
It's a very practical film, so
Yeah.
there's one shot where they needed just a little extra.
Yeah, they were like, well, we can't just use gel.
And I can't even tell.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, since you mentioned gel, that all the tears, little stop motion trick for y'all out there. Whenever you see like tears in stop motion, a lot of times there's different artists that use different materials, but a lot of times it's hair gel.
Yeah.
Because it'll stay there long enough for you to take the shot,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can wipe it off.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make the puppet a mess.
Yeah. Just like kind of looks wet as
Yeah.
much as you need it to. I think the material innovation in stop motion films is really interesting to me.
Yeah. Especially snow. Snow fascinates me in stop motion films a lot.
Do we have any? I guess there was a little bit of snow with the wolf scene.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not as much in this movie. This
Yeah.
movie's a very fall film, but there's a lot of Christmas
Yeah.
stop motion out there.
Yes. That is true.
So there's a lot of different formulas for snow
Yeah.
amongst the stop motion community.
Yeah.
Just because it's been done so many times.
I want to get my hands on one of those paintings that Mrs. Fox does.
Yeah.
That would be pretty great.
Painting thunderstorms.
Yeah. I was thinking a little bit about the story of this movie just because it's like, it's both mundane, but it's also a heist movie.
Yeah.
So I was kind of trying to like trace character arcs throughout it, just loosely. And it's so funny to me because a lot of the characters have like a full character arc, but almost come back to where they were at the beginning. Because it's very much like, oh, the world is against us, we have to survive, but also we are clever enough to make the most of it. And that kind of appears as a theme throughout the film. Because Fox is obviously like the title character.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like his son is the main character in this movie. Ash has like the most development out of any character in this movie. So I always like to trace him because he's like kind of a brat at the beginning. And then he learns. He becomes more like self-aware and
And
a little
caring.
bit more mature. Yeah, because I think he sees Christopherson as like his rival, but it's because he looks up to him and he like envies his poise and control. But I want to live in this world more.
Yeah, I feel like that's also a theme throughout a lot of Roald Dahl's books. Is like the character kind of has a lot against them.
Yeah.
But they eventually overcome their difficulties and troubles.
Yeah. Roald Dahl's a really good storyteller in that he shows you that the solution to your problems was in you the whole time. There's no like outside magic source that's going to improve your situation more than you could by setting your mind to do something and by allowing yourself to change and be a better person.
Yeah, I can't think of a Roald Dahl book where there's like a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. Like there's always some kind of like soft magic and like none of his characters quite fit into their worlds.
Yeah, but magic isn't the solution.
Yeah. It's always you are a good person, so you should go out and make the world better. Or, reflect on yourself and figure out how you can make yourself better.
Yeah. And
like,
to that point, Fantastic Mr. Fox is not necessarily a good person all the time.
No.
And he pays the price for it dearly.
Yeah.
And learns his lesson, hopefully, by the end.
Yeah. But those farmers definitely do not. They get the fox gets the last laugh in this story. That's for sure. So, yeah, that was Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Well, should we rate this?
Yes. I am giving it the thing I was looking up when my phone rudely interrupted us. I give it 10 red remarkable apples out of 10.
Wow.
You get it? Because they're apples with stars on them.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a lot of stars.
It's a lot of stars.
As a reminder of my rating system, it's on a scale of -5 to 5. -5 being so bad it's good, 0 being just plain bad, and 5 being the best it possibly can. I'm gonna give this a 5. 5 out of 5. I can't.
Is this our first full?
I think so. I cannot dock this movie any points. I literally
can't think of anything to critique.
Everything is just so masterfully pulled off, and any quote mistakes that are in there are done so intentionally.
Yeah.
And artfully.
It's a lesson in
making art with your story.
Yeah. Thoughtful filmmaking.
Very thoughtful.
There you go. All right.
Well, thanks for bringing this.
Yeah.
I'm all cozy now.
Yeah, I needed the cozy vibes. My alternative was a horror movie, so I think I'm glad we went with this one instead, but we'll get to that one eventually. I think we'll sign off for the evening where we are. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. And we'll see you in the next episode.
See you then.
Thanks again for dropping in, and we hope you've enjoyed the evening as much as we've enjoyed having you here. Till next time, please drive carefully, and good night now.